to Essentials Explained. My name is Luke, and today we will walk through a market sizing exercise to estimate the number of coffee cups that are consumed every single day in New York City. If you like this content, please like and subscribe, and check out the other videos on our channel. Our question is to estimate the number of cups of coffee that are consumed every day in New York City. The first thing we want to do is clarify or understand, is our target market just the city of New York or including the surrounding metro area? Our interviewer will clarify, great question, we want to focus on just New York City and exclude the surrounding area. Another clarifying question we might want to understand is our client's definition of a cup of coffee. Is it based on a certain number of ounces, maybe 8 or 12 ounces, or is it based on a single beverage cup? Our client views a cup of coffee as 8 ounces, with multiple cups possible in the same container. Both of these questions are really important. You need to make sure you have clarified the question and that you are aligned with your interviewer on the question you are trying to solve. Both of these can have vastly different answers if you're trying to gauge the number of people in New York City or the metro area, or if you're trying to think about how many beverages or individual cups am I drinking versus the number of 8-ounce standardized measurement. So make sure you have aligned with your interviewer and clarified all the questions to understand how to solve the case before diving into the numbers. In summation, we want to estimate the number of coffee cups that are consumed in New York City, excluding the metro area, regardless of where that individual lives. So include commuters and visitors. We're excluding residents drinking coffee outside the city. For simplicity, let's actually just focus on the population of New York City, excluding commuters and visitors, and assume that they consume all of their coffee in New York. So this question is asked, how many cups of coffee are consumed in New York City every single day? So you'd be very reasonable in assuming that you should include commuters or people that are visiting New York City but don't actually live there. We're asking this question and ensuring you are aligned with your interviewer will make the question a lot easier, make it a lot simpler for you to solve. So again, make sure you have alignment with your interviewer. I will say this is the number one thing that can send people wrong in case interviews. And they can go and spend half the interview, they can spend 3/4 of the interview solving the wrong problem. And it's really hard to recover from. This portion is really important. And the reason I'm spending so much time here is because they're so excited to get into the numbers and build the framework that they don't actually pause for a second and say, let me take a minute, make sure I understand the question. Make sure me and my interviewer are aligned on the question we are trying to solve. So one way to estimate the daily number of coffee cups that are consumed in New York City is to segment our customers into 3 different types. Our first being non-coffee drinkers that don't consume coffee at all. Our second being one and done or consume coffee once per day in the morning and then don't consume throughout the rest of the day. And then finally, those that drink coffee all day. Given coffee consumption between these 3 customer segments varies significantly, it's helpful to map them one by one to estimate the total number of coffee cups that are consumed. If we take this framework and layer in the New York City population, and then estimate the percent of population that is greater than 18, so potentially can drink coffee, and then estimate the percent of population in each segment, we can get the segment population for each one of our 3 customer types. And then within that segment population, we can estimate the number of cups of coffee drank every day to arrive at a final number of the number of coffee cups drank in New York City. So we can build a very simple table to walk through our framework and solve this problem step by step. First, we want to start with the New York City population and the percent of population that's greater than 18. We have estimated that the total population of New York is around 10 million, and that about 20% of those are under 18, implying a population of 2 million that are under 18 and are not addressable to drink coffee at all. This is a great example of being able to simplify numbers and demonstrate your ability to think critically. You could say that I think the population brackets are about a quarter from 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, with about 25% of the population in each. But given that New York City likely skews older, and there are likely less kids that actually live in the city, I'm going to assume it's about 20%. This one makes your math easier and you can work with 8 million people instead of 7.5, which is a little bit easier, and shows that you've added nuance onto the question and shows that you understand what is the context and what might be different about this population that I'm trying to size versus the overall US. And within my 3 customer segments, I'm going to estimate that 25% of the population doesn't drink coffee. about 50% has coffee once per day, and 25% consumes coffee all day, which segments the 8 million individuals that are addressable for drinking coffee into 2 million that don't drink coffee, 4 million that drink it once per day, and 2 million that drink coffee all day. Another super quick aside here, you can also note that you think this is probably slightly higher than the average and say that my opinion is that New Yorkers drink more coffee than the average American, so I have tried to include an elevated coffee consumption level to match my expectations for the target market. Great way to show that you are thinking critically and your ability to incorporate qualitative information into your market sizing. And then finally, we can estimate the number of cups of coffee per person. So our no-fun Nelsons don't drink any. Our moderately caffeinated Carlas drink maybe 1.5 or slightly more than 1 8-ounce coffee cup per day, resulting in 6 million. And then finally, our Jittery Johns drink about 4 cups of coffee per day, resulting in 8 million cups of coffee. I think these numbers are relatively reasonable, but if you're in an actual interview, it would behoove you to justify this answer by bringing it back to your own experience and by referencing Starbucks coffee sizes to equate the 8-ounce coffee cup into a reasonable assumption, which you can calculate off. And you could say that the one and done segment, I think on average, someone has maybe a Starbucks tall coffee per day. Some people have less, some people have more, but that comes to about 12 ounces of coffee per day, which is 1.5 cups of our definition of coffee. For our high end, I think they drink about 2 grande Starbucks coffee cups a day, which is 2 16-ounce coffee cups or 4 cups of coffee per our client's definition. 2 very logical ways to think about it and gives real grounding in how you are thinking about arriving at the number of cups of coffee each of these segments will consume. So in summation, our estimate is that there are roughly 14 million cups of coffee consumed by New Yorkers every single day. One great thing you could add here is a little bit of sense checking, and in particular, demonstrating to your interviewer that you are sense checking the answer. That number feels directionally right to me, but hard to know when you don't have a great sense of average coffee consumption for large metropolitan areas in the US. One helpful way to think about this is to bring in reference point, like roughly 1.5 to 2 8-ounce cups of coffee per individual adult in New York City is helpful for guiding your understanding of the problem and shows that you are able to bring in helpful information to sense check your answer and ensure it is aligned with expectations. That feels directionally consistent to me. And if I got an answer that was maybe below 1 cup of coffee per day or maybe above 3 cups of coffee per day per adult, it would give me a red flag that maybe I messed something up in the math. Maybe one of my assumptions is wrong, or maybe there was something I didn't account for. And so doing that last sense check is really important for being able to really ensure your number is aligned in the order of magnitude that you would expect. And it's great to be able to walk your interviewer through that logic and say, this is how I'm thinking about it. This answer feels directionally reasonable to me based on this reference point. If you want to add in a quick next step, this is a pretty short interview, so you don't need to have some crazy, 3 or 4 bullet next step. I would simply note that this number understates the total market. And while we have not accounted for and have not sized the total number of cups consumed by those that are visiting either as tourists or that commute into the city and consume their coffee in the office. Again, I wouldn't put a number here and say, I think it is X, because you'd just be picking a number out of nowhere. And one of the things they actually gauge you on is, are you able to effectively participate in meetings? And if you're in a meeting with a senior executive that you just throw out some random number because it sounds right, that is not a good thing to do. And that is probably obvious, not something you should be doing. So when you're in interviews, make sure every number you provide or every quantitative point is backed by some kind of data, and just imply that there is additional work to be done and that you have not fully sized the opportunity. It will show that you are thinking about the holistic answer and that you are not simply throwing out numbers, because this is something that honestly you don't want to do in the real job, and you don't want to just toss a number out there. But you do want to understand that there's likely additional room in this market that we have not accounted for. If you have enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And thank you for joining us at Essentials Explained.